In a forgotten village scorched by drought, one high school boy dared to challenge the impossible. He wasn't rich, he wasn't famous, but he saw a future no one else believed in. He built a water pump from a broken bicycle, faced rejection from his own family, was laughed at by his entire village, until the wind turned. What started as scraps and science became a miracle that changed lives, and when a powerful leader heard the story, everything changed. This isn't fiction, this is inspiration. And the message? Sometimes one bold choice can transform an entire nation. Watch until the end, because what he created was more than a machine. It was a movement. In the heart of Africa, where the soil cracked like broken glass and the wind carried only dust and despair, hope was a stranger. The sky had forgotten how to cry. The rivers had forgotten how to flow. And the people, they had forgotten how to dream. Children walked miles for water, each step stealing energy from their education, each drop a battle between survival and ambition. Mothers watched their gardens wither. Fathers stared at dry fields, wondering how to feed families without rain. It wasn't just drought, it was defeat. A silent, slow defeat that clung to every home, every hut, every heart. But among those dusty roads and crumbling hopes, there was one boy. A quiet teenager who didn't see what was missing. He saw what could be built. His name wasn't in any book. He had no money, no mentor, no machine. Just a school uniform faded from sun, a notebook filled with dreams, and a heart full of physics. Every day he sat in class, not just to memorize equations, but to solve something far bigger. How to save his village from thirst. And as he walked home past the broken pumps, past the silent well deep beneath their feet, he whispered a question that would not leave his mind. What if the wind could work for us? It sounded ridiculous, even to him. But sometimes the most ridiculous thoughts are the first sparks of revolution. He didn't know how. He didn't have the tools, but he had an idea. And in a place where nothing moved but the wind, he decided to make it move something more. His hands didn't know engineering. His village didn't know belief. But deep inside that boy, a quiet rebellion had begun, and it would all start with a bicycle. Not just any bicycle. The only one his family had, and he was about to break it. Not for mischief, not for escape, but for something far more impossible. To build a wind-powered water pump, to bring water to a dying land, to bring life to a forgotten people, and maybe, just maybe, bring back the dream. The bicycle was old, but it was everything. Bought with years of savings, sacrifices made in silence, meals skipped to put away coins. It wasn't just transportation, it was freedom, hope, dignity. And now the boy was about to take it apart. He ran his fingers over the worn handles, remembering how his father used to ride it into town, how it once carried dreams of opportunity. But this time, it would carry something else. A windmill, a water pump, and maybe a second chance. The plan lived in pages of torn paper, diagrams drawn late at night by candlelight, equations scribbled beside dreams. His physics book, creased, dog-eared, sacred, became the blueprint for hope. But when his mother found out, she didn't see innovation. She saw betrayal. She cried, not tears of grief, but of disbelief. What kind of son destroys the only thing we own? She shouted. Neighbors echoed her fury, laughed in his face. Books don't bring water. Wind doesn't fill buckets. He said nothing. Because how do you explain vision to people who've never seen possibility? They thought he was foolish, worse, mad. They mocked him in the market, whispered in the fields, and every time he passed, heads turned, eyes narrowed, voices sharpened, but he worked. Every night he stripped the bike, built blades from scraps, forged a rotor from rusted parts, and when his mother refused to speak to him, his father came. Quietly, he brought oil, a wrench, encouragement. Don't stop, was all he said. Sometimes that's all a dream needs. Not permission, just protection. Under a sheet of stars, surrounded by whispers of failure, A boy and his father built a windmill. They didn't speak much, but their silence said everything. One believed in the dream. The other believed in the dreamer. And that was enough. Because in a place where water meant survival, and survival was rare, sometimes you have to break something precious to build something powerful. And that's exactly what he was doing. Breaking. The bicycle, building the impossible one bolt at a time, one prayer at a time, one gust of hope at a time. He never said much. He never had to. When the world called his son a fool, he didn't argue. He just watched and waited. Waited for nightfall. Waited for silence. That's when he moved. Not with grand speeches or loud defense, but with a wrench, flashlight, and faith. While the village slept, he knelt beside his son in the dust and helped turn junk into a future. He oiled the gears, held the frame steady, lifted blades with trembling hands. This wasn't the first time his hands had built something, but it was the first time they had helped build a dream. He remembered his own childhood. He had wanted to be an engineer. But war came, then hunger, then silence. He had buried his dreams deep, the way men bury bones. But now, his son was digging them up, piece by piece, bolt by bolt. And so he stayed hidden, not because he was ashamed, but because he knew. Sometimes to protect a seed, you must cover it with darkness first. His wife didn't understand. Not yet. She saw a broken bicycle. He saw a blueprint. She saw a foolish boy. He saw an inventor. He wasn't angry with her. She carried her fears like buckets of water. Always full, always heavy. But he carried something else. Belief, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that shows up, every night, without fail, even when the screws didn't fit, even when the windmill leaned wrong, even when they were one gust away from failure. He stayed. Because sometimes a boy doesn't need applause. He just needs one person to hold the ladder steady. And when the final bolt clicked in, when the wind caught the first blade, he didn't smile. He cried, quietly, under the stars, because it wasn't just a machine turning. It was something more. His son's dream, his own redemption, and maybe, just maybe, the future. It was quiet that night. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that comes before something changes. The boy stood beneath the sky dusted with stars, every bolt, every blade, finally in place. The windmill stood tall and fragile, like hope. He took a deep breath. His fingers trembled, but his eyes were steady. His father stood beside him, silent, watching. Neither of them spoke, because they didn't need to. The machine groaned, it creaked, and then it caught the wind. The blades spun, first slowly, then faster. The crowd didn't gather, not yet, only the earth responded first. A deep, low hum from the well below, then a hiss, a sputter, a sound they hadn't heard in years. Water. It burst through the pipe like the land had finally decided to exhale, cold, clear, alive. The boy dropped to his knees, his hands wet with proof, his heart racing. His father just stood there, tears spilling before a smile could. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The silence that had wrapped their village for so long was broken by a single stream. Word spread, quickly. Feet ran, eyes widened. Mothers gasped, fathers stared, and then came his mother. She stopped when she saw it. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Her son turned, his hands still dripping with victory. She stepped forward, held him tight, not out of apology, but out of pride. The villagers who once laughed stood now in awe, and the boy who once carried their ridicule now carried something else entirely. Their respect, their gratitude, and water. The windmill spun, not just with air, but with hope. Hope that maybe one person can change everything, and that sometimes the wind doesn't just move the trees, it moves people too. The sun rose differently the next day. It didn't just bring light, it brought news. By morning, the entire village had gathered. They stood in a wide circle around the windmill. No one spoke at first. They didn't have to. Water trickled steadily from the pipe, filling buckets, basins, and empty hearts. Then, a single clap. Then another. Applause rippled through the crowd. It was hesitant at first, then louder, stronger, uncontainable. Laughter followed, not the kind from mockery, but relief. Children danced around the water, splashing, screaming free. The boy watched from a distance, not because he wanted credit, but because he didn't know how to accept it. His father nudged him forward. "Go," he said. The crowd parted as he walked. People clapped him on the back, some apologized, others just smiled, awed by what he had done. His mother approached, tears in her eyes. She cupped his face in her hands as if to be sure it was real. "I didn't see it before," she whispered, "but now I do." He smiled, then turned toward the windmill. It spun slowly, like a heartbeat returning to rhythm. That afternoon, the village came together, not to mock, but to build. New piping was laid. Storage tanks fashioned from salvaged drums. Every hand joined. Every doubt turned into action, because when hope flows, it pulls everyone with it. And the boy? He became more than a student. He became a symbol of persistence, of faith, of what's possible when one person dares to believe. By sunset, the fields were damp. Seeds that had slept for years now had a reason to rise. And so did the people. The same villagers who once laughed now cheered, and with every gust of wind, every drop of water, every beat of the blades, a new story was being written, one of resilience, one of redemption, one that was only just beginning. News travels, sometimes on the backs of journalists, sometimes through the buzz of radio waves, and sometimes through a whisper that refuses to stay quiet. This time, it reached a palace. Thousands of miles away, a young African leader sat in his office, watching a grainy clip on his phone. A boy, a windmill, a village around him cheering like they'd just seen rain for the first time in years. He paused the video, rewound it, watched again. Not because he couldn't believe it, but because he could. He saw his own childhood in that boy. The same dry fields, the same endless walks, the same ache to make things better. The next morning he cleared his schedule. No press, no speech, no motorcade. He arrived quietly, stepping into the village as just a man, not a president. The villagers gathered slowly, eyes wide, feet unsure. The boy stood still, confused, until he recognized the man from the news. The two shook hands. No podium, no cameras, just respect. They walked together toward the windmill, the blade still spinning, pulling water with. Every turn, the president asked questions. The boy answered, shy at first, then certain. He explained the bike parts, the wiring, the science he'd taught himself. The leader listened, and when the boy was done, he turned to the crowd and said, "This is what leadership looks like." And just like that, the windmill wasn't just a village project. It was a national story. Funding was announced that week. Pipes, solar panels, classrooms. The village that once ran dry was now overflowing, with resources, with opportunity, with pride. And the boy? He didn't change. He still walked with dust on his shoes. But now he walked a little taller, because a windmill built from scraps had turned a forgotten place into the future's blueprint. It didn't end with the windmill, because real change never ends. What began as one boy's rebellion became a movement. His story spread far beyond borders. Teachers across the country showed it in classrooms. Inventors referenced it at conferences. Parents whispered it to their children at bedtime. He had become something rare, a living legend still in his school uniform. But he never let it swell his head. He still fetched water for his mother, still helped his neighbors fix their roofs, still studied under a kerosene lamp because the power lines hadn't reached them yet. But they would, because now the government had pledged to bring light where there had only been heat. Engineers came, surveyors came, change came. The windmill stood untouched, a sacred symbol, not of technology, but of possibility. Visitors came to see it, but they left remembering the boy, the one who didn't wait for rescue, the one who didn't ask permission to believe. Scholarships followed. So did speaking invitations. He declined most. He said, the work isn't finished, because to him, it wasn't about being known. It was about making sure every dry village had a chance to dream too. And so he taught. Not in schools, but in fields. He taught kids how to build windmills, how to read wires, how to believe in something they couldn't see, until it turned. His father still stood by him. His mother still cried sometimes, but this time, with pride. And the village? It became a blueprint as others followed their lead. One by one, machines turned. Wells filled. Hope flowed, not because of a hero, but because of a choice. One boy chose to break a bicycle, and in doing so, he broke a cycle of helplessness, of silence, of waiting. And as the wind blew across the fields, as children laughed, beside running taps as seeds sprouted where dust once ruled, his story became a legacy, not written in books, but in the sound of spinning blades, and in the lives they changed forever. He didn't build the windmill to be remembered. He built it to bring water, to bring life. But in doing so, he gave us something even greater, a story we will never forget, because it reminds us that change doesn't come from speeches. It comes from action, from breaking something valuable to create something priceless. So ask yourself, what's the bicycle in your life? What are you willing to risk to make something better for others? This wasn't just a story about a boy in Africa. It's about every one of us, about courage, about vision, about choosing belief, even when the whole world laughs. If this moved you, if it made you feel, then share it. Let the wind carry his story to someone else who's ready to change the world, because maybe the next miracle is already spinning quietly in someone's backyard, waiting for us to believe.